So, what we're going to start with is just the debrief from um, our first retreat. So it was, obviously a lot of work. So what went into it was about, I'd say, 5 to 7 hours or 8 hours between myself and the group, as well as their interactions individually with the facilitators who sit with the actual group. I didn't actually sit in the ceremony. I wanted to kind of stay a little bit removed and just host. And so preparing for a mushroom ceremony that is and was a it was a minimum of 5 hours that they had to be in the clinic based off of the amount of mushrooms that they did. So they did 34 milligrams, which basically equates to about 3.4 grams, so a pretty large dose. Um, in order to be able to do that in the regulations, in the regulated framework in Oregon under Measure 109, which is the only state right now where mushroom therapy is legal, still federally illegal as a Schedule 1. But in the state of Oregon, it is legal to do this type of work with trained facilitators under a trained service center license with manufactured mushrooms that get tested at a testing facility. So a really nice regulated framework. You can see the COAs on the mushrooms, all of that good jazz. But why we prepare people with talk therapy on the front end is because the group, number one, needs to get comfortable with each other. And what's really amazing, as opposed to doing one-on-one work with a group, what tends to happen is that pre, during, and post ceremony, everybody's supporting each other. So it's a really nice marriage where it's not just on the individual to support themselves. And what you find is some people that are going through a difficult journey, you'll often get uplifted, or others in the room who may be internalizing how difficult it is will feel a little better by hearing people yell or scream or purge or have an outward dialogue of uncomfortableness or facing some sort of trauma and releasing that. So you have to prepare before so that the group is ready for what may come up, and then the facilitators need to be ready for what may come up. So that's what was done about 4 weeks prior, leading up to the ceremony.
Did they, can I interrupt you for a
Yep.
sec? Did you have anybody, because when medical marijuana was first coming up,
Mm-hmm.
and Colorado was the only place that was the first place that was legalizing it. It was first medicinally legal, and
Uh-huh.
then 5 months later, I think it was recreationally legal.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually the one. If anybody wants to know, the reason that I do it is I'm epileptic. And I've had probably God knows how many concussions. I suggested it to my neurologist about 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He laughed in my face. And then he went on to do all the uh, I'm sorry if I lose words because it's the medications
Mm-hmm.
that do this. And I'm also switching off on medications right now. I'm checking into the hospital on Monday.
Mm.
Uh, fun,
Take your
fun.
time.
I know. No, one of the medications makes me lose words and have trouble with sentences. Um, uh, Whatever. He went on to do the do the testing with children and then adults, and then he went on to have for the only two the only two FDA approved medical marijuana medications,
Mm-hmm.
Sativex and Epidiolex.
Mm-hmm.
So I love him. a whole lot, right?
Right.
Um, but w- with you, or with this group, do they have any sort of, uh, and medical people?
Diagnosis?
No, medical people, because you're saying
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
you
So
have comfort.
yep. So the intake is HIPAA compliant. The service centers have medical directors, and nobody gets to the stage of preparing for a ceremony unless we know what type of antipsychotic medications they're on. If they're bipolar, schizophrenia, there's very clear goes and no goes. So we use the exact intake process that John Hopkins uses for all of their clinical trials, that the FDA companies use for all of their clinical trials. So yeah, absolutely. And we'll take all the Liz, we'll take all the questions towards the end. And if you guys have questions, just populate them in the chat. Um,
Oh,
and
so
yeah, no
never,
problem.
never done one of these chats,
Ah,
so
it's
I.
all good. It's all good. And it's a great question. It's a great question. And you know, definitely a lot of the service centers the only service centers that I work with, all handle these intake forms with the same rigor that an FDA approved medicine clinic would handle it. So all HIPAA compliance, etc. So it's a great question.
I would imagine that Oregon, that it's going to go the same way that marijuana did, like Oregon, Colorado, and those places are,
Yeah,
those are
Colorado's next. Yeah.
those are going to be the first ones that are going to approve it. And
Yeah, yeah.
what
Colorado's next, California's next, but we'll get to that after the debrief for sure. So appreciate your
why don't
question.
they just make it why don't they just make it easy and just do it at the whole country and just
Yeah.
it would make
Hopefully
it a whole lot.
hopefully when Compass Pathway gets there.
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah, so after we understand and prepare, and maybe I should have started there. After people are have completed their intake form, then we start the preparation for these ceremonies. And as I just mentioned, everything is HIPAA compliant, and everything is handled on the back end of these service centers with an EMR system, similar to if anybody goes to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. They take intake forms, MADRS scales, anxiety scales, etc., to figure out a diagnosis for you, and then based off of that diagnosis, they're able to prescribe you certain medication. So after the intake form, after everybody qualifies to come, then we begin those preparatory group sessions, as well as any individual sessions that anybody wants to do, in order to just really understand the trauma that we may see or face, or in order to just understand the individual a little bit more clearly, in order to, again, the group can uplift and kind of help them through the difficult times of the ceremony. Because, albeit, number one, mushrooms is not a panacea. You constantly are reminded by that once you get into life. But there is an amazing afterburn effect that does happen, that a number of these individuals are now going through right now, and they've given me permission to read a few of their testimonials, which I think is the best way to describe a ceremony. So the preparation happens, and eventually, what my job is to make sure that everything is taken care of around the ceremony. So help everybody with flights, the accommodations are taken care of, food is taken care of, transportation is taken care of. Individuals just have to get themselves to Oregon, and then be ready to experience the medicine. So day one, we all got there on Friday, and I was able to pick everybody up. And what we did was checked into the Airbnb. I've since sent a few social media posts out. Check into the Airbnb, and then we immediately went to the service center. So not only do individuals have to go through a certain amount of hours to prepare, but we need an in-person with the facilitators the day before in order to partake in the ceremony on the Saturday. So we went there, we met the two facilitators, and we sat for about 2 hours. And there we just talked more deeply about these set intentions And then everybody was able to get comfortable with the facility or with where they were going to experience this medicine. At this particular facility, there was a really nice atrium in the middle. So you had the ability to go out on a deck to get some fresh air should you need it. There was a group room. And then there were also individual rooms that facilitators could take somebody into should somebody need to be, should somebody need to be in a more private setting to kind of work through some difficulties or some anxieties that they may be experiencing so that it doesn't affect the rest of the group. But that only happens if there's something particularly loud or distracting that's happening. But for the most part, try to keep the group together. So, as we were talking, intentions were being set, getting to know the facilitators. You can only do so much through Zoom, feel the energy, look in the eyes. Everybody was just getting a little bit more comfortable. I will say that day one, there's a lot of anxious energy. And rightfully so, with a lot of these individuals, this is the first time that they are doing this medicine. But I was lucky enough to be surrounded by 4 individuals who just so happened to all be males. And they were all ready to really see something, to really experience something, to really go through a high dose experience because they were really just tired of either living the way that they were living, of suffering the way they were suffering, or just really wanting to uncover things that they couldn't uncover for themselves. So mushrooms sometimes, well, we'll start with the body. The body has an innate ability to basically keep us alive. That's the job of a human being. The eyes, the mind, the soul. So we're always on edge, and or particularly some people can be more on edge than others, and the body is made to protect us, so it protects us from traumas. It did this for me, for example, when I was in my hockey career. When I was a minor and I moved away, there was a lot of hazing and abuse that happened. And I look back on my career now. There was a lot of talk therapists around me, but the way that I expressed myself on the ice was by beating people up, was by hurting other people. And I didn't realize until after my career and sitting with some of these medicines that I had a lot of, guilt, shame, anger because of the things that had happened to me. That is how I was behaving. So, but I couldn't uncover that on my own. I couldn't really correlate that back until I sat with this medicine. So, unconsciously, the body protects us. And even when I was, going through some talk therapy, which I had during my career, it was really hard to access it. And I think that's one of the main reasons why, for example, these trials are showing that it can relieve somebody's depression for up to a year, as well as with MDMA for PTSD. It shuts down that fear response that the brain kind of puts up this signal like, no, we're not going there. You're not able to access it. So MDMA comes in and basically shuts down that part of the brain. Psilocybin specifically shuts down the default mode network, which is where we hold our sense of self, who we think we are, based off of all of our learned behaviors from school, from our relationships with our friends, our parents, our brothers, our sisters, as well as our traumas. So it has this innate ability to shut that down, allowing the brain and the spirit to kind of open up. And so all of these individuals were ready to see what they came to see, and that was a really unique and really awesome aspect of this group. Um, and and so we sat there for 2 hours with the therapists. Really got comfortable. We then laid down for a 20-minute breathwork session. So 2 weeks prior, there's a 14-day diet or dieta, as well as a 14-day training for breathwork. Some of this can be overwhelming when you take the medicine. And so breathing, allowing our breath to calm the nervous system down really helps us to get into the ceremony a lot faster. So, and with a lot of ease. Um, and so we listened to a really nice breathwork meditation. And then after that, it was about 2 hours and everybody felt comfortable enough. You ask questions, you engage. And then we packed back into the car and we went back to the house. I cooked for the guys. We had some help as well. One of the guys there used to run a few restaurants back in Philly. And so we had a nice salmon dinner, nice and light. Everybody hydrated, and then everybody was in bed by about 7:30, 8 o'clock. You got to remember we're on PST time, and most guys are used to Eastern. So everyone got a good night's rest, and we woke up the next day, no food, hydrated. One of the main things that you have to ensure as a guide, if you want to call me that at this point, for what I was trying to facilitate, a minimum of 10 to 12-hour fast is what I like to go into a ceremony with. Most people will say minimum 4. But this medicine, when it converts from psilocybin into psilocin, fits into our 5-HT2A receptors, which are 80% to 90% in our gut. And so the less food, less competition there is in the gut, the more predictive, or the better this medicine will take hold. It'll be more bioavailable, they say. So everybody was ready when we woke up. Everybody's in good spirits, and got everybody to the service center, and basically give everybody a hug. And at that point they were pretty well prepared. And then I talked with the service center owners for about a half hour, and then I went back to the house and started to prepare a nice homemade soup for everybody for when they came out of the ceremony. So I also prepared fruit, and I also prepared some water. So I won't go into too much detail of what was seen in the ceremony, except for what I will read to you guys after this debrief right before the Q&A sessions, which I think will help you guys understand exactly what the possibilities could be for an individual who's courageous enough and brave enough and wants to move past any type of destructive thought patterns or bad behaviors or depression, anxiety, or PTSD, whatever may have you, concussion, any type of physical or moral injury. So 5 hours later, these guys are coming out of the ceremony. I'm getting some texts. I'm getting texts from the facility saying that everybody did great, and that everybody had a really, really good experience. So packed up the car, 4 bowls of fruit, 8 bottles of water. And one of the things that I really like to do, because we're doing this in a clinical type of setting, if you're in a decrim state, or if you experienced it the way I experienced it the first time, I had access to nature, I had access to inside, I had access to a TV, I had access to speakers, I had access to everything. These individuals didn't. You're not necessarily allowed to go outside. The atrium's nice, but it's just a little deck. So the first thing that we did was, obviously everybody's kind of telling me about the lessons that they saw and learned, and their realizations, and how much more connected they immediately feel to themselves and to others, and how grateful they are for their lives. And 2 things that really resonated with these 4 individuals was gratitude, grateful for their lives, which they were not before, and love. So, and I know that sounds very woo woo, and I am the furthest thing from it, but this is why somebody will not be depressed for a full year, because the medications that are in our current medical system help to numb us. They help to they don't do the things that these medicines do. It's pretty much the complete opposite. These medicines help connect us to feelings, to thoughts, to our lives, to the lives that we've made, whether we're proud or not. They have an innate ability to just make us see the good in everything rather than seeing the negative. And it did that for me as well, turning my negative self-talk, just from what I learned from all the coaches and how I motivated myself into positive things. So so I packed everybody into the car, and I got them right into nature. So we went to Lithia Park, which is right downtown Ashland. There's some nice Japanese gardens there. So we walked up the trailhead. The river was running, so you get the sounds, you get to see, you get the sense of the trees, of the pine, of the water, and it's a really nice way to start integrating back into your body, into life, into reality. Because for the past, 4.5 or 5 hours, these individuals were not necessarily able to partake in normal life, so to speak. So that was really nice. The guys really enjoyed it. We took a couple pictures. The Japanese gardens were actually closed because of the koi pond cleaning, but the guy let us in. He was from Philly, and so he was nice enough to let us in, and we had the whole place to ourselves for a little while, which was kind of cool. So packed everybody in, got them back to the house. Basically, we had this nice house that was a kitchen, living room, all in one. So we were just gathered around the food and the pot and the chicken soup, and a bunch of guys went out and made calls because, one of the things that I immediately wanted to do was FaceTime my family as soon as I woke up the next morning, see my kids. I wanted to hop on a flight and get right back to them, which was not like me before a ceremony. And a lot of these guys experienced the exact same thing, just more connected to their spouses or their kids, and just grateful for them and for the relationships that they had. So we ate some soup. We had some ribeyes. The guys they wanted some red meat, and so we packed them full of fruit, soup, meat, veggies, and we just sat around and talked about their experience, talked about where they were before and where they were now, just 5 hours later. I've heard somebody describe a psychedelic journey as packing 30 years of talk therapy into 5 hours. Really just the reason you do high doses of these medicines is because they exasperate what's at the forefront of our mind, and they put a mirror right in front of our face, and you can't run from it. You can't turn it off. And so that's why you have to really prepare and understand and be brave enough to know. But everybody always comes through it. There's always some sort of anxiety phase, but everybody always at the end of it feels much more in tune with how they need to live their life, in accordance with ways that will make them happy and make the other people around them happy. So um, that was day two. That was the Saturday, the dose day. I'm just going to pull up some of these testimonials. And then day three, we woke up the next morning, and I booked everybody a sweat. And I should say at this point, one of the things, it's called Chozu. It was like a tea bath garden. There's sauna, there's steam, there's cold tubs, there's hot tubs, hot springs to soak in. Um, you know, I've taken all of these cues from Native Americans. Native Americans are the ones who have developed this technology, so to speak. These mushrooms come from nature. They've developed these ceremonies and these ways of taking this medicine successfully, and now we are just mimicking it, and turning it into these statewide programs and these sorts of things. So I felt a very big responsibility, and I do moving forward. I'm going to support veterans and first responders, but money needs to be given to some of the tribes in Oregon of the land that we were on, doing the medicine that they have shepherded to this point. So I felt that the next day, but the guys and we did cold tubs, hot plunges for about 90 minutes, sauna, and that really just helps to get the blood moving, move some of I wouldn't say just heaviness. You can feel a little foggy the day after. And so that kind of clears the spider web, so to speak. Got in the car, went to drop a few of the guys off at the airport, and then I drove to Portland, because that's kind of where we flew out of, and then I had some other business to do there. And for all intents and purposes, it was a really amazingly smooth ceremony for everybody. It was a relatively, for being the first retreat, I've obviously been on a lot of them. It was a very, very smooth um 3 days. For me, it was four because I flew into Portland on Thursday, the day before everybody flew in, but it was pretty remarkable. So now, what I'd like to do, and also too, I should say, like, I got so much out of it, even though I didn't do the medicine. One of the things that I learned from working in AA program when I had an issue with opiates, was that you have to, now you freely give it away. You freely show somebody the piece that you have. In order to keep it, you have to show someone else the way. And my goal with anybody that comes into this community or partakes in any of these ceremonies, the goal is to get you healthy enough over the course of a year to then you go and do it for somebody else. And that's always been the goal. It'll always be the goal. You can still stay in the community, but we want people to become mentors or elders, so to speak. So I'll read the first testimonial. This was day 2. So this was on Monday when I landed. So I had a red eye on Sunday night. I'd say for me, I just feel this realization of how blessed I am with everything I have in life, and this overall feeling of just being more positive about everything, which before my default reaction to everything was constantly negative, and then I'd have to walk it back and try not to be. Testimonial number 2. I would describe it as this overwhelming feeling of gratitude of how lucky I am to be alive and to be me. I'm thankful for the ups and the downs and have a restored faith that God won't put anything in front of me I'm not capable of handling. I feel connected, present, and excited for what the future holds. Testimonial number 3. I feel lighter and my mind is at ease, free of negativity. I can finally share my feelings and express my love to the ones that I have shut out for far too long. I feel connected, present, and excited for what the future holds. Number 4, I feel like a child going through the life and world of an adult. I am not attaching to anything and am moving through the world in an effortless way. Responsibilities and work are still there, but I can now just take it for what it is. Um, so, you know, just, digest those words. Again, the theme of everything was grateful, love, and I think that's really what did it for me, was when I realized and I felt this unconditional feeling of love in the ceremony, which you always get to, no matter how difficult some of the parts are. And that's really where you can start to, live life and feel more confident and start to really work on your relationships and your businesses and whatever issue or problem, or even if you're a well person, like I'm a well person now, I am not sick. I have not been sick for 4 years. Do not identify with depression or anxiety or any of these injuries. And so, individuals like myself can still access this to continue to get better, to continue to stay in the present moment with my kids and increase my recovery and sleep. I'll be posting, one of these individuals did a QEEG prior and did a QEEG afterwards. And they also have been wearing wearables. So we'll be showing you guys just how much better their sleep and recovery and heart rate variability has gotten as well. Um, Day 2, a lot of the same, a lot of the same things. I'm feeling much more relaxed, more aware of my breathing, and I feel like I'm getting consumed or not getting consumed with my work. It's definitely helping me stay focused and present. A bunch of guys went home and just cooked a bunch of food, focusing on diet, nutrition. I think that at this point, we should say that this medicine is one piece to a living a full life. Exercise or movement is extremely important. If you can, getting out in the sun, having some type of hot or cold exposure is important. Focusing on diet and nutrition, watching our alcohol and sugar intake, making sure that we're meditating or doing some sort of visualization for how we want to live our lives. All of those things are extremely important, and that go to support, a medicine journey of this nature. So, so yeah, there are a lot of dates, coming up in May and June that I'll circulate to everybody. There's going to be a women's only retreat towards the end of May. I know that a bunch of you are on here that have expressed interest, so I'll make sure that I get that out to you guys. I have you on a email list separately, um, and yeah. So why don't we go to some of the questions? So look forward, might have to duck out. That's okay. Is everyone at ceremony all first timers, or would there be some more experienced? Yeah, so I think it just depends the way that it shakes out. Two of them were first timers, completely new to it, and two of them were not. One was, yeah, babe. Yeah, I'll cook it. Okay. I gotta cook some chicken tenders for the fam later. So everybody at the ceremony was not a first timer. And it's really just a matter of how it shakes out. Um, if there's four first timers, I don't mind it at all, to be honest with you. We try to go for 4 to 8 people, anywhere in between there. Six is a round number. Um, but but yeah, some people are experienced, some people aren't, but it really that doesn't matter. None of these things happen by coincidence, right? The facilitators already kind of knew that this was a group drawn together. Everybody obviously had a connection to me, but um, but yeah, I hope that answers your question. Did I hear you wrong that the ceremony dose isn't a microdose? I'm confused as I learned the dosing amounts. If you could, so 34 milligrams is what that's what it's of active. So stay with me. 1 gram of mushrooms usually has 10% active psilocybin in it, which would be 10 milligrams. So 2 grams of psilocybin would have 20 milligrams of active analyte. That's how the OHA tests and basically reports milligram amounts. I know it's confusing, but anyway, 34 milligrams of active of psilocybin within the mushroom. Remember, and I'm going to bring a mycologist on to explain this much better than I can, but there's norbaeocystin, baeocystin, there's tons of other tryptamines, alkaloids within the mushroom, and different genetics do different things. That's why if you just take synthetic psilocybin, you will get a feeling, but you won't get the benefits of, for example, the visualizations of certain strains that really target the frontal lobe, which is what we try to use on athletes and veterans that have had head trauma. Because we know most of the trauma is leading with our head, especially in the NFL, the NHL, from shooting guns, etc. Those concussive hits. So you can really get targeted with different strains that can target different parts of the brain. There's a strain that's purple mystics. It helps you see at night, so it's really fixing the eye and the eye brain axes. There's a strain called OTC that's much more hard opening. It's almost like MDMA, so it's very, very gentle. There's a strain called Steel Magnolia that I'm still trying to tame that is just absolutely intense and just very, 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 very buzzy. So different genetics do different things, but that's a much more nuanced conversation. And we do have the ability to have we have a menu. And so what my job is, because I do know these genetics well, I try to match um, my people with what genetic I think would be best. So, for example, if I know that these are first timers, I'm not going to go and give them Steel Magnolia. I'm going to give them a little bit of a more gentle strain. But because these guys in this first group wanted to see something, we hit them with albino trinity, very specific genetic, which is pretty potent, and they all did really well. If you could explain further on dose amounts, conversions. So yeah, and all naturally dried mushrooms. So the reason I love these programs, statewide programs, and the reason that I'll always advocate, and the reason we're opening up a facility is because I believe in full spectrum medicine. I truly do. Although I know that synthetic psilocybin will is by far and exceeds anything on the market right now that doctors are prescribing for depression or PTSD. It's still a synthetic, and you kind of lose a lot of the other tryptamines, alkaloids, as I mentioned. So I'm a full spectrum guy all the way. Fairly certain he said around. I could be wrong. So does everybody get that? How I explained it? Good. Perfect. Um, of course, Joseph, no problem. You're welcome for the detail. I would imagine people dealing with major trauma challenge might be very adverse to experience and revealing with strangers. Would you think that perspective may hold people back in a group session or due to default mode? Um, there were a couple people that, like, there were a couple guys that came to the ceremony, two in particular, that were dealing with a lot of stuff, and they were open. They were open with me first, and I asked them if they would be comfortable being open to the group, and they were. I think that they just got to a point in their lives that they were okay, sharing these things in front of a group. And I think it was because particularly this person was a first timer, and I think he wanted the support of the guys. He wanted everybody to be aware of his struggles. And everybody that came to this ceremony all had struggles. I wish I could have done the mushrooms. I'm in a place in my life right now where I know I need another ceremony very soon, because there's things that I see slipping through the cracks. Small things, but things nonetheless. And so, other people have the option, right? If they come to me, if they or want some information on one-on-ones, that's also an option too. Like, happy to connect them to a service center should they not want to do the group ceremonies. Um, and the group ceremony is also, pretty cost effective as well. Um, okay, cool. Tim Rush, how were the first timers selected? What were their issues? So they the first timers, how were they selected? They reached out to me. I have a pool. There's about 120 people now on a wait list that I'm moving through, and that I'm connecting to some of these service centers that I'm working with, and they're basically giving them an intake form in order to qualify. If they then tell me that they've passed that intake form, then they move to kind of step two, which is a deposit for the date, and then we start preparing. So really, it's that HIPAA compliant intake form that basically tells me that these individuals don't have a bipolar diagnosis, they aren't, or have a family history of schizophrenia. Those are two pretty clear no-goes for psilocybin. And then the other ones are just antipsychotic medications. If they're on high milligram amounts, those are kind of no goes if they're on specific antipsychotics. And then, and I think the next question I always get is, what about SSRIs? SSRIs inhibit the receptor that the psilocybin, mainly the 5-HT1A, but it can blunt the effect of psilocybin. So that's good to know. It doesn't disqualify you. But what some of these service centers will do is just give these individuals a higher dose at the beginning, or they'll have a what's called a booster shot ready to go if say somebody wasn't fully honest or truthful with the SSRIs and they're not feeling it, then they can take a little extra about an hour in. So that's how everybody's selected, not just first timers. What were their issues? So two of them were concussion survivors. I won't get too deep into their issues, and the other ones were just stuck in some rumination periods in their life, and they just wanted to break some bad habits and really clean their life up, clean their food habits up. I can't fully explain why mushrooms do this, but mushrooms have the innate ability to also help you make better decisions. I don't know why. I don't think any neuroscience on earth is going to be able to tell us why, but these mushrooms have been around before humans. And they truly, every time I take them, no matter how anxiety filled or how difficult or how easy, because I've had blissful experiences that were just pure joy, they want the best for us. That's why I love this medicine. Yeah, because it just continually wants the best for us. And that's nature. These things come from nature. This is also another reason why I just refuse to use synthetics, because I feel like it takes the spirit out of it. Um, because these are isolated genetics from nature, brought into a lab, grown to a specification, so they still have that genetic from nature. Who are the facilitators? They're all trained. There's 297 of them. You can pick your facilitator if you'd like, and there's bios, and there's tons of them. There's more facilitators than there are service centers. There's more facilitators than there are service centers to work at, to be quite honest with you. And that's for a number of different reasons. Only Oregonians can become facilitators, and only Oregonians until January 1st, 2025 can own and operate a service center. So if you're not an Oregonian, or you don't have somebody to operate it for you, you can't actually run one of these facilities or grow the mushrooms or testing, etc. I did 8 ketamine IV starting at okay. Although I did not help with my ailments. Are there any similarities? Um, so the place I did not offer psychotherapy. Okay. So, one of the things we didn't talk about was the psychotherapy aspect, is making sure that my people have access to facilitators, which they do, to the facilitators. For example, Drew was nice enough to come over for breakfast. Um, the next day and just make sure everybody was cool. We also have a standing meeting starting tomorrow, every single once a week for an hour, and then everybody's on a group chat with me, so they have access to me 24/7. But psychotherapy is immensely important to integrate lessons learned, to just be able to have a space on the phone where people can just kind of express what they're feeling or what may have come up, because realizations start to happen, sometimes 6, 7, 10 days out. Um, and so ketamine is a disassociative, meaning, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of like being in the K hole. You are not communicating on ketamine. You are very much in your body. Um, it's really hard to explain. You disassociate with even having a body. And you're not necessarily communicating with a therapist as you are on mushrooms. Like, you're still in your body, you still have all of your use of your extremities, etc. But you can see auras, you can mushrooms are just very, very different. And ketamine was used as a wartime anesthetic since the 1950s. It's been used as an anesthetic in the hospital system since then, and they just figured out that it can also be used to take people on a ride. It's FDA approved. I see Liz shaking her head. It is the first FDA approved associated psychedelic. It's approved for treatment-resistant depression. It's approved by Johnson and Johnson. They bought it from Janssen. And it's really important to note the indication, because these companies that are developing these medicines are not shy about going after the sickest of the sick. In order to be considered treatment-resistant depression, you have had to have tried 3 or more other treatments that did not work for you. So just different. IV especially is very different. Spravato is an intranasal spray. That's the one that you can use insurance, that Johnson and Johnson has approved. But IV ketamine seems to have the most efficacy. To give everybody an example, we mined our data of over 5,000 ketamine treatments in our clinic that were done since 2016. I only owned and operated it since for 3 years, and maybe one day we'll present some of that data. But it was putting people into remission 50% of the time with PTSD. We had a lot of eating disorders that were coming to our clinic, around 40% remission with infusions over a 6-week period. So it's a great tool. And I think it's one of the best tools in the toolkit right now, as opposed to any of the other medications out there. But psychotherapy is important because it can be very confusing to be disassociated with your body. But it can also be very enjoyable to finally get a rest, to finally, one of the things I said to the guys is like, they're like, why am I so happy? I'm like, well, I mean, when's the last time anybody or any of us on this call intentionally set aside, 6 hours to explore their own mind and consciousness and get better? How many times can we say that? So, I think that's one of the main reasons why you start, self-caring, and you can immediately start to feel better. Do you try to pair groups who are dealing with similar traumas and or challenges when doing these retreats, or is it a mix? It's There's no coincidences in life. I don't believe in them. When people are ready to pick a date and they want to come to a retreat, then and it works out. There's a lot of things that have to go right. Then that group is ready. And so the only intentional things that I do is if I'm intertwining veterans with first responders and athletes or executives. Those are very particular groups that I'm very sensitive to. And so, with the help of the facility and the medical director at the facility, I'll ensure, and also, the veterans, I'll ensure that people have the right mindset to be able to handle some of that kind of chaotic or higher energy that's associated with some deep trauma. So apart from that, we just take the lead based off of, symptomology, what individuals are telling us, and about their history. So there is some planning that goes into these retreats. They're not hastily thrown together. One of the reasons I do these webinars is because it usually takes about a 3 to 4 week period to get somebody comfortable to commit, and then another 2 to 3 weeks to get them there. So, Daniel, did any of these four individuals have the same symptoms that you had previously, or did any of them have different symptoms? The reason I ask is that your symptoms are so much the same as what my wife experienced, so I'm just trying to compare. Yeah, so one of the guys for sure he was right where I was. That kind of angst feeling, the tense feeling, the feeling of guilt and shame that he felt from his family, from his newborn son, from his wife, that I can tell. And he just wanted to feel better. And I could tell that he was in a lot of pain, and he was very much like me. And the relief that I saw when I picked him up, and just the immediate kind of um the facial expressions, the face says it all. He was just so much calmer, and he could smile, and he really couldn't stop smiling, which was nice. And he couldn't wait to get home. And he was one of the main guys that felt just so much gratitude for the people around him that stuck by him, because he'd been dealing with this for 6 or 7 years. And now, I was confident that he didn't have to, suffer any longer. So, and he's doing great. He's given me some reports, and um, he's integrating back nicely into family life. So, I've seen people that were worse than me. Not many, because I was pretty bad. I was pretty close to dying. Um, and yeah, I hope that helps, Bert. I believe strongly that obviously it's not medical advice, but that these medicines can help improve the lives of many different individuals suffering from neurological and psychiatric disorders. I heard you say you were opening a facility. Yeah, I am opening one in Portland. We actually just received notice that they accepted our LOI. So that's really exciting. The reason I'm doing that is to have control over SOPs and manuals, as well as make sure that we can offer this therapy at a lower price point. So yeah, really, really exciting, and culmination of my life's work. I know why I'm put on this earth, for sure. Is there a strategy if a first timer experience is difficult? Come on in, babe. Yeah, come on in. Um, oh, thank you. You're the best. No ketchup. Thanks. My daughter brought me a chicken tender. She's the best. Um, no good. Is there a strategy for a first timer experiencing difficulty letting go? Um, yeah, just breath work. Breath work, and if you agree to it, touch. Um, touch of the shoulder, the heart, um, and just knowing, like, at one point, one of the guys had a really difficult time. Um, I don't think I can say like the swear words that he was saying, but at one point, both facilitators were at his side. Just making sure that that he knew that he could kind of surrender to what he was seeing and that everything was okay. Um, so breath work is really, really important. Um, and no, I mean, like I said, nothing really disqualifies anyone unless you do have those histories of schizophrenia or bipolar. There's a few other things, but and then certain medications. But no, I mean, I think that again, this kind of goes back to what I was trying to explain before about our bodies innately and our spirits. Like we're just out here trying to live, not being eaten by a woolly mammoth, and that's still kind of hardwired in us, just to survive. Our eyes see, and we usually go to it, but um, so it's hard to access these trauma states or states that are just uncomfortable. Our body doesn't want to let us go there. So for whatever reason, not going to be able to explain it, and I don't need to. It doesn't need to be explained to me. These medicines that we find in nature help us to unlock these areas of our brain, body, and spirit that we are not allowed to go to when we're sober. When we're just trying to get better. It's hard to get it into talk therapy, so it just kind of peels back the onion, so to speak. And so no, I mean, no, I don't believe that there's any kind of hardwired trauma that would disqualify you, although there may be better medicines for you, right? That the medical director might suggest before you take a psilocybin ceremony, like MDMA, for example, which works really well for veterans with PTSD, or um, really good for sexual abuse survivors. It was about 50-50 for the clinical trial participants for MDMA for PTSD. So um, So average cost, Brendan, is between we're trying to get this a little further down, but it's between 3,000 to 4,000. There is a fund that I just teamed up with called Thank You Life. And then obviously this is why we're opening our own facility, because the cost to going in and renting somebody else's facility and taking the medicine, etc., facilitators, is a little prohibitive. But I can, if you guys email me, I can send you some more information, and then we can do our best, if anybody needs help financially. What time day do participants fly in out for retreat? Yeah, so fly in day one, usually by noon, before noon. And then it would be flying. So that's usually a Friday. Try to get it done on a Friday. I know people work. And then fly out usually Sunday night or Monday morning. So day three out the night. And that's why we dose in the morning. You have almost two full days, or at least a night and a full day of recovery. Yeah, so James, yeah, you will be notified. I was kind of just getting back, getting, caught up with my family, day job, etc., getting prepared for this. But I'll send an email this weekend, with just some possible dates. And I was also talking to another facility in Portland, that helps with the cost because, flying into Medford is usually a little bit more expensive and just less options. So partnering with somebody in Portland for the meantime. Thank you for sharing. Are the participants ingesting dried? Yeah, so great question. John, they are ingesting ground up mushrooms that are lemon teched. So what the lemon does, or the acidity, as I mentioned before, it converts the psilocybin, which is a prodrug, into psilocin. And then that way it's very predictive that all four individuals will be in the ceremony at the same time. And then they'll also be out of the peak experience in and around the same time. Sometimes others are in it for a little bit longer. How many facilitators? So that just depends on milligram amounts. But usually there's two facilitators. We had two facilitators this time around for 4 people. But it all depends on milligram. If we went any higher than 34 milligrams, it would have had to be a 1:2 ratio. And we probably would have had 3, because then, if somebody needs to go to the bathroom, etc., you need that extra facilitator in the room always. Yeah, any examples of types of music? Yeah, there's 2 really great playlists. Well, 2 that I use, the John Hopkins one, as well as the one that was just used in this ceremony. I'm happy to share those via email as well. It was a horse tranquilizer. Yeah, so it's an FDA approved medicine. And if they used to tranquilize horses with it, I don't know. Now they're using it to cure people's depression, and it works. And it's FDA approved. They've gone through all of the clinical trials. It's actually going to be a blockbuster drug this year. There's 2,700 ketamine facilities, and I think it's one of the best tools on the market. A hell of a lot better than Wellbutrin and these other things that they're feeding us. So, but yeah, I get it, Liz. Um, how do we get on the waiting list? So Jay Howard, I'll email everybody. And if you guys want to email me, most of you have my email separately. Feel free to, and we can get you on the wait list. Jake, I've taken mushrooms before, medium, small doses, not in a retreat. I've noticed some benefit. First, wondering if taking mushrooms on your own. Was it better to take a big dose before? Yeah. So, and this is the last one that I'll do, and then we'll circle back around. You know, a lot of people have found benefit to microdosing. There's an app called Citizen Scientist, where people have done like double-blind placebo studies. There's just not a lot of really good data on microdosing. That being said, there's tons of people that find a prolonged benefit, myself included. Nothing gets fixed in 5 hours, especially when I was hitting kids at the age of 4. So that type of damage needs some prolonged exposure to some of these medicines. I use a lot of lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps, chaga, agarikon, turkey tail, legal mushrooms that can be found at Whole Foods. Mushroomreferences.com, I'll put this in the chat, is a pretty amazing resource for all clinical trials done on some of the mushrooms that I just referenced. Mushroomreferences.com. Oh, wait, let me do it to everybody. There you go. And you can go and view the clinical trials that have been done. So, psilocybin can create these new neural pathways. So something, a phenomenon called neuroplasticity. Once these new neuronal pathways are made, then you can feed it with things like lion's mane that increase BDNF. Think of lion's mane as like miracle grow for the new cells that you just made to help strengthen them up. Cordyceps is really great for energy. Reishi is really amazing for rest before bed. Chaga, agarikon, has been widely used for thousands of years as an elixir of life. And these are all really great neuro anti-inflammatory benefits. Mushrooms are some of the best things that you can take. Now, that being said, I will preface it with making sure that you're not getting the mushrooms from some of these mushrooms need to be taken in a fruiting body format. Some of them are better taken on like myceliated rice. But you need to really make sure that you're sourcing these mushrooms from a good place. Mushroom Harvest is where I get all mine. So here you go. USDA certified organic farm out of Oregon. Pretty amazing dudes. And I take the 14 blend. And it's really cheap. Really, really cheap. Can it help those with ADHD? I'm not a doctor, Keith, but if you go to the John Hopkins studies, there's a lot of studies done on ADHD. And you can check that out. So 14 blend. Yeah. So I take all of my medicine, all of my mushrooms in the morning right after it hurts my tummy. Yeah, Dustin, not to be a dick, but you probably got a bad diet, dude. So all of these mushrooms help clear your GI tract out. And that's one of the reasons my wife doesn't take any of them, because she's when I first started her on it, although it helped her with her migraines for 6 months, we were at Disney and she was so pissed because she was just, running back and forth to the bathroom all day. But psilocybin, lion's mane, reishi, they all help to attach to, the intestines, the GI tract, and it just completely clears you out. So if that's happening, what these mushrooms also do is they show you, right, what's wrong. So for example, if you have headaches and sometimes you take a microdose or you take lion's mane, and sometimes your headache will be exasperated. If you have anxiety, you might feel a little bit anxious. If you have ringing in the ears, of helps a lot of people through this, that might get louder the first day, the second day. But what that's telling you is that it's working on that pathway. These mushrooms are targeting that, makes it worse for a little while, and then it starts to take it away. And that's always the case. So just beware, that could happen, but that's a good thing. It's a good sign. So yeah, no problem, Bert. Well, guys and girls, I am going to go eat these chicken tenders, and I will send out an email. No problem, with updated dates on the women's retreat, updated dates. We're going to do a No Fallen Heroes retreat. As I mentioned, profits from all of these retreats will be going towards treatment for veterans and first responders of No Fallen Heroes. So that'll be happening at the end of this month, right after the women's retreat, which I'm really excited about. And yeah, thank you guys for coming. I mean, 27 people strong for the whole, hour and 10 minutes. Solid showing. So we'll do it again next week on Thursday, same time, and I'll be in touch via email.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, no problem. See you guys.
Take care.
Yeah.